Welcome to the Clear the Shelf podcast with Chris and Chris, the show that meets at the intersection of education and entertainment to discuss online arbitrage, retail arbitrage, wholesale, and all facets of selling on Amazon. We'll bring you news, tactics, strategies, insights, stories, and interviews to help you grow your Amazon business. And now, here are your hosts, Chris Grant and Chris Rasick. What's up, Amazon sellers, and welcome back to the Clear the Shelf podcast with myself and my homeothermal co-host, Chris Rasick. Our guest this week is Grant Douglas. He lost his job during COVID and turned that setback into a thriving Amazon business, now doing over $1.5 million in sales a year and looking to be on track for $2 million this year, if that's correct. And since he lost his job, he built a business that runs lean, runs fast, and profitably with a heavy focus on replens and outsourcing. Reason we wanted to have Grant on is because he's working smarter, not harder. Like, family time is important, not necessarily spending 80 hours a week working on the business. And he does this by setting up systems along with a small team to help him stay profitable while also growing his business. So today we're going to dig into how he builds his leads pipeline, what his team looks like behind the scenes, and what systems he's using to scale without burning out. Grant, thanks for being here, man. I'm looking forward to this.
Yeah, absolutely. Love I get a chance to talk to you guys.
Yeah, wow, love it. So before we get started, you guys know the drill. We spend minutes preparing for each one of these shows. So if you guys get some value from this episode, do us a solid, pound the like button, hit subscribe, drop a comment. The best way for us to grow this podcast is by getting you to interact with the show and letting us know you want to see more content like this. And of course, if you keep up your end of the bargain, we'll make sure to come back with some more education mixed with a little bit of entertainment. So let's go and let's dive in. So let's start at the very beginning, man. You lost your job and then you turned to Amazon. Can you talk about what that first 90 days was like? Like, how much of it was scrambling versus like a plan, and you knew exactly what you were going to do to make this thing work?
Yeah, for sure. So I had a pretty unique situation in January 2021. It's coming right after COVID, and there were two things that were happening. Number one, I felt like it was probably in the cards that I wanted to leave my job here soon. And then number two, I thought it was probably in the cards that I would lose my job here soon, just because of all the businesses and things that closed during COVID. I could kind of see the writing on the wall. And so for me, it was, hey, I need to find out some other way to make some extra income. I was the only one making money for my family. My wife was also pregnant with our third kid, and it was pretty, necessary to at least do something. So I had a friend that did kind of the RA clearance shopping, Marshalls, TJ Maxx, all those type things, and made good money with it. And I found a Nate Jackson Hustle Buddies videos where he made like 100,000 flipping bras at Kohl's. And so I knew there was a way to make it work. And I started off trying that. I went RA. I bought two things my first RA trip. I returned them both. And it was in February 2021 that you showed up in Nate Jackson's Hustle Buddies group with, I think, like your second or third OA challenge. And just the idea of online arbitrage being something that I could do at home, it seemed a little bit more flexible, not as much on a hamster wheel. And I gave that a go. And I was at least confident enough after that to really see that I think that I might be able to make some good money with this, that I kind of had that open conversation with my employer that was like, hey, look, this is kind of where I'm at. I see the budget. I know where you're at. And we mutually agreed, like, hey, how about you work for the next 4 months? You help us transition us and you out of the job. And so I was promised 4 months of income to keep working. And then on the side, what I could do is ramp up my Amazon business as fast as I freaking could. And maxing out 0% interest credit cards and buying anything that I could. And I think that really helped me and motivated me. It really allowed me to scale as fast as I did, as I felt like I had to. The alternative of not doing that was I had to get a real job that was taking me away from my family, and I didn't want to do that. And so luckily, I think in February I had 1,000 in sales. In March I had about 4,000. April was about 9,000, and then May and June I had 15,000 a piece, and that really allowed me to start outsourcing and really around the time I had to leave. So ironically, my job asked me to stay one more month, so I got paid through August, and by then I was doing over 40,000 a month in sales, making full-time income, and really the rest is history.
That's awesome. Now, I'm curious because like you kind of did all the things that I guess a lot of people nowadays would say, "Oh, I don't know about that." Maxing out 0% interest credit cards and things like that. And I know that you were in a situation where like it was make or break.
Yeah.
But would you tell like new sellers to do anything differently today compared to when you started?
What I tell people today is you need to be okay with whatever the worst case scenario is. And the worst case scenario is that your Amazon business gets shut down, your inventory is not given back to you, at the very least your payout you're not going to get. And what would that do for you financially? And I didn't think about that. I didn't even know you could suspend an Amazon account. I didn't like ignorance was absolutely bliss for me. But if I were to tell someone now, it's just that. It's that, hey, there's a good chance that this could not work out, and you need to be okay with that. But I talked about this conversation with someone recently who's doing, about 10, 15,000 a month, really trying to bring her husband home from his job. And we just talked about the what if, right? Like, and she brought it up of like, we've really thought about just him quitting his job and us just doubling down on Amazon and what that would be. And the conversation we had was again, what's the worst case scenario? Honestly, you declare bankruptcy and your husband has to go back to work. That's probably a no-go for some people. And I get it. But you also look at the flip side. What's the best case scenario of it is, your husband's home with your kids now, and maybe you're making more money. And the answer is normally somewhere in the middle, right? It's not, we're going to dive ourselves into debt, or we're going to never work a different job in our life. And you got to balance that. But really, the people that make the most money, the people that make more money than me, what always happens is they tell a story of a time they took a chance, a story of a time that maybe other people would have said that's a foolish thing to do, and they did it anyway, and it worked out for them. So I think making small risks, a little at a time, seeing if it works out and going off of that is okay. And everyone has different risk tolerance. And everyone has to make that decision for themselves. But the game has changed today versus 2021. And there's probably, knowing what I know now, I wouldn't have done to the extreme that I did, I don't think.
Yeah, that's fair. Uh, I'm gonna just go off on a little tangent here for a second, and maybe this is a little bit of a hot take, but I know that not everyone is willing to take the risk where the end result could be, some time in front of a bankruptcy judge.
Yeah.
But I gotta admit, we're kind of lucky especially here, that is like the worst case scenario. If we zoom
Yeah.
out a little bit, debtor's prison was not that old of an idea. But like, I don't know, we're kind of born and bred here to take these risks, and we've got a nice path out. And even with bankruptcy, it doesn't necessarily mean that you like lose your house and lose your cars. Like you can reorganize and things like that. So I don't know, that's always something I keep in the back of my mind. Not that I ever want it to happen, of course.
Right.
Grant, so scaling that fast, the two main components of that, obviously is capital and then being able to purchase the inventory, right? The two necessary steps to scale that fast. And then for the audience, as we get through this conversation, that picture will become clearer that you work smarter, not harder, when we kind of get into the work-life balance stuff. But I want to talk about inventory, because the poster child for work smarter, not harder from an inventory perspective is replenishable inventory, is going back and not reinventing the wheel. The true replenishables, not the marketing term that I like to pick on our shows, but the real thing. So when did that concept of I've already done the initial scouting work and I can just simply buy the same inventory over again, when did that really click in for you, the true Replens model?
So, Chris, I don't know if you still start with this in your OA challenges now, but the very first day, one of the very first things that he kind of laid out was, if you average $3 profit on 10 ASINs, or sorry, $10 profit on an ASIN you can sell 10 times a month, you can do the backwards math to figure out how many ASINs you need that are replenishable in your catalog to make whatever income you want. And for me, the math was, if I had 150 ASINs that I could sell 10 times a month, $3 profit each, that I could net the money that I needed to leave my job comfortably. And so I had the concept before I had the proof to back it up. But once I had 150 active ASINs, I can tell you I had more than full-time income. And so luckily I kind of had that in the beginning. I think a lot of people are first taught about clearance and this idea of, well, if I'm going to buy low and sell high, it makes sense to go to the clearance rack and go to the thing that has the deepest discount. And I saw this, and I've heard this explained many times. Like, even some people I know, they'll go to the place that has the absolute deepest discount, right? The clearance rack and the highest ticket item. And that's the first thing because, hey, that is the most likely thing to be able to be flipped. And that probably is true too. But more than that item, I love the item that I can make $2 profit and sell 200 times a month. I could make the argument that it's actually less risky, depending on what the graph looks like, what the supplier is, and things like that. And just little by little, my perspective on what I buy and why I buy it has evolved so much. There's a lot of different ways to make a buck, and what it comes down to is, I think, the less ASINs that I have to deal with and the less new ASINs I have to buy to keep my inventory, my business afloat, seems to work best for my business. And I've done a lot of that recently, of just, said a different way, I'm not looking for home runs. I'm not looking for triples. I'm looking for almost all singles. I'm the Ichiro Suzuki of Amazon selling. I don't even ever try to hit a home run. And if I do, it's because the defense messed up and I got home because they made a bunch of errors. I get this hot selling thing that gets discontinued and happen to have 50 units left. And it's like, awesome, I made good money. And that's just one way to do business. But that's what I've found in the Replens, that just, I feel like my business is more stable than someone that is always going clearance shopping all the time, or always going out waiting for the next store to go on sale, to have a solid business.
And that's interesting, because that's kind of an advanced concept. That's kind of a concept that newer sellers, can't grasp right away. And especially, it's interesting that you're looking, because everything seems based on the long term, which almost seems counterintuitive to the situation that you were in, since it was a necessity thing. The end of your safety net, that was, you knew when that ended. You knew what was at stake with the family and whatnot. Is it personal wiring? Is that in your DNA, or is there a story of the origination of grasping these concepts so quickly?
I think it was just, so, I mean, it hasn't been all roses. In 2022, I still had my best month I've ever had. I did 180,000. One month, my profit was ridiculous that month. And I tell people this all the time. My wife and I looked for beach properties that the next month. We thought we were like, dude, this is too easy. This is like stealing. What is going on? And that was when you were dealing with still post-COVID supply chain issues. It's a different world than it is today. And but really after that, the OA to prep center buying stuff for $50 and easily making $15 model kind of went away. Not that it's still not out there, but I think the replenishable side of it went out there. And I just had to kind of regroup, and I had to look at what are the things that are selling that are making me consistent money, that are more reliable. And it happened to be those things that were replenishable, good ROI, but not crazy high profit. And like, I think Nike was a good example. I used to sell a lot of Nike. In Nike, you can have a really good 2 months, and then all your Nike socks can tank for 9 months. And there's no prediction of why. And I had these other things, and it was just like, and it's again just preference. Like, what's better, making a whole lot of money in a little bit of time and then making no money for the next 6 months, or always making a little bit of money over and over and over and over again? And I do like math. My brain's math wired. Maybe that has something to do with it, but it kept falling back to, this is what is giving me the most predictable money. And that does matter. I'm still the only one that provides for my family. And if I get, if there's a store that cancels me, that I do all these huge volume at, and I get gated, and or whatever it may be, like, it could be a big hit on me. But if I'm spread out really well across a lot of brands, and just a bunch of places are making me $2-3 a piece times 50 units a month, it certainly seems like it's safer for me.
Yeah. You talked about, growing pretty quickly. I know you did it with 0% interest credit cards and things like that, but I don't know. There seem to be these milestones. Like, everyone talks about, going from 0 to 10K a month, and that's kind of the first milestone. And then after that, maybe it's 30,000 a month, but 50,000 is one of those numbers that people really want to get to. And we see a lot of people talk about getting there, but then I don't see a whole lot of people posting about actually getting there. So what do you think it was that you did differently that, I don't know, maybe 90% of others are not doing to be able to get to 50K a month quickly?
I think that a lot of the content that's out there for sellers is a lot of times for new sellers. And sometimes that we get stuck in these habits and these suggestions and things that are great for new sellers, that then they don't graduate on to, there's actually some other things you can do. There's some different ways to do it. And some examples would be, inch deep, mile wide. I still do that in a different degree, but this idea of, hey, just keep sending 3 to 5 units, and hey, if 5 sell out, send in 5 more. Maybe send in 10, and we don't really talk much more after that. And I didn't realize it was rare that I was sending in 50 of a bunch of products until I talked to Charles Leslie, who owns Network Prep, and that's where my inventory was for a year or so. And he made it's a side passing comment, and he was like, "Man, we love it when it's your day to prep." And I didn't know if he was just buttering me up. He's just being a good boss, and things like that. But I asked him. I said, why? Why? He said, well, it's easier when you have 50 units of 30 ASINs as opposed to 5 units of 85 ASINs. And it's, in those scenarios, they would make the same amount of money. But I'll tell you, I work a lot less hard replenishing 20 ASINs I send a lot of units of than I do, the flip side of that, 80 ASINs I only send 10 units of. Mm-hmm. And so that's just one thing of, new sellers get stuck in, hey, don't send more than 3 to 5. Don't test more than 3 to 5. I'll test 10 or 20, normally not too much more than that, but I have before. And don't sell on anything the brand's selling. Don't sell on anything with an IP complaint. These really basic things that are really good advice for brand new sellers. And I think they forget, hey, maybe not everybody follows these, and maybe there's a time that you can go past those new guidelines and barriers that we put for new sellers. Mm-hmm. I think that's a part of it. And then just not being afraid to brainstorm and talk with other people. It's, I learn just as much from the people that I help with Amazon as I help them. There's times that we'll they'll talk about a website or talk about a strategy or talk about just something that they're doing, a way they prep, a way they ship. And I'm like, I never thought about that before. And it's another thing that Charles Leslie does really good is talking about always finding ways to save yourself 5 seconds, because if it's a repetitive task you do over and over and over again, if you can do it faster and quicker, it leaves you more time to do other things. And I kind of leaned into that as well. How can we prep a little bit faster? How can I get my VA more involved in my business so that is there anything I'm doing my VA could do? Even if he could do it half as good as me, because of the pay rate, even if he could do it, 5 times as slow as me, there's a lot of things that still make sense to hand off for him and have him do. And yeah, and I think it's that maybe a combination of getting stuck in what we've always been doing and keep doing it, and not being afraid to think outside the box and do things that other sellers are doing, and don't be afraid to hand stuff off.
It's interesting. That's a great point about I was just thinking about that the other day. There's so much stuff for the new seller, and it's kind of like middle child syndrome with the intermediate seller. They're kind of just left to dangle. There's not a lot of content. It feels like an opportunity, to be honest. I know I would have and would appreciate it at this point. So that's a great point you make. So all right, so I want to. So you mentioned, the story about Chaz telling you he loves when it's your day to prep. You talked about buying 50 units. You alluded earlier that 50 units at maybe a lower profit, say $3, for the sake of argument, you feel is safer. So, and then if your catalog is only, say 150 ASINs or something, based on your targets and whatnot, can you melt those two together? How do those coexist? How is that safer to the audience going, I'm not sure I'm getting this? Like how do 50 units at $3 profit? Is it a matter of if it tanks, only 20 of those 50 units are selling at the depressed price, and you have stock to come back and profit on the back end, or how does that work?
Yeah, and not certainly. I honestly sell at every price. So I don't want to get this illusion that I'm just selling these things that, hey, I buy for $5, I make $2. I'm not afraid to sell those, but there's still stuff I sell that are high ticket. But what I've just found over time is that, and I also don't do very much merchant fulfill. And I think that's a lot of people's answer for what I'm about to say of why I sometimes avoid those more expensive things. But if you have something that has a $50 buy cost and you buy 5 units of them and you spend $250, or you have something that is a $2 buy cost and you send in 100 units of it, it's close to the same amount of buy cost and inventory. And I've just found that with what's a good way to put this? Lots of times people, if something has a really good ROI and a really good margin and it's priced high, it is infinitely more likely to tank than something that has a really good ROI and profit that's priced lower. I think it's because there's this idea that the way to scale is to increase your buy cost, and everyone wants to scale to 50,000, like you're saying, and then they kind of leave some of these low hanging fruit. And don't get me wrong, everything can still tank. But that thing that you once saw at $20 profit selling for $100, don't think that thing can't go from $100 selling price to 60, because it absolutely can if it gets on a leads list or other things. Well, the thing that, you were buying for $2, making $2, and selling at $9.99, it might tank. It's not going to tank lower than $7. I'm not going to lose more than 50 cents or 25 cents a unit. And that's just from my personal experience. There's exceptions to all that. I've gotten stuck with inventory. I have something here that has 100 units that I get to slowly sell on eBay for the next 15 years. And it is what it is. But I'm still good to play my cards on, I think, capturing the opportunity of making money when I can. That's maybe another side of it that people don't realize, and like, hey, I only want to send in 5 units of everything, right? You got 20 ASINs. Hey, I just want to send in 5 units of everything to mediate my risk. And because, hey, I'm going to get gated on 5% of what I send in, I'm going to get gated on one thing. So, hey, that spreads out my risk. And I think the math, if I'm explaining this right, actually doesn't really do that. If you have 20 ASINs and you send in 100 units of each, and you get gated in one of those, yeah, I have more units that I have to sell, but I made way more profit than you did because I sent in more units. And so if every single month I'm going to lose 1 to 5% of my brands for gating or a transparency listing, whatever it is, I'm going to lose the same amount of percentage as you. The good news is I sent in an average of 20 units instead of 5. So I made 4 times as much profit to make up for the same losses that we both had. I don't know if I articulated that well enough, but I think lots of times they think that they're doing the less risky thing by only going 5 deep every time. And I've heard it said too, and this answers your original question, of the biggest difference between someone that does, 20,000 a month is 100,000 and 100,000 a month is knowing when to go deep, knowing when to pull the trigger. And because it's not on everything, there's many things I sell 10 times a month and I'm happy to do it. But it's when you see that certain dip in the keep a graph and new seller count, you see that dip in the price going up, and it sells enough velocity, and it's from a store that isn't a huge store that anyone knows. And it's like, I think this is the time to buy 100 of these. I think the timing is right. And I think for newer sellers, it's about slowly taking those little risks to be like, all right, I'm going to this time, this looks like the perfect scenario. I'm going to buy a lot. I'm going to see what happens, and just trust your own data. See what happened. Did you do it right? If it tanked and you were wrong, you know what? You probably should still keep sending in 3 to 5 units. But if you swing and you hit this time, maybe try it a second time, maybe try it a third. And I think I just personally kept seeing that these opportune times to buy a lot kept paying off, that it made sense to just keep doing it.
Yeah, that makes sense. And really, if you think about it, people, number one, people who have the thought like, okay, I'm going to stay wide and not deep, and I'll just increase my buy cost and therefore, my sell price at the same time, and that my numbers will go up that way. Number one, you're certainly not the only seller thinking that way, which it kind of feeds into your that stuff tanks as well, going from 100 to 60, like in your example. So it's not a new concept. It's not an original, but the people that think that, but it also translates to number of units too. Like that same concept works. Like, okay, if it's this much profit buying 5 units, it would be this much profit 20 units. It's kind of it's the same concept, but approaching it different angles. And you can make a strong case that worst case scenario is more survivable under the way you describe it. As far as certainly one single return is much more survivable, under your method. So that's interesting. What's your OA to RA mix as far as sourcing?
Yeah, it's mostly OA. I do have like 1 or 2 wholesalers that I buy from as well. I have one RA place that I still hit pretty deep. But the thing that makes the money for my business is OA, or in some of my replenishable wholesale. That's really so I would say, probably 60% OA, 30% wholesale, 10% RA right now.
Okay.
Nice. Sounds very much like someone else we've had on the show, Jeff Storch. Yeah. So let's jump into the weeds just a little bit. I heard you explain this, your concept of kind of like your Replens pipeline, your leads pipeline. Like, what does that look like?
So it's just this idea that, and I know that Replens is a tricky term, and it can mean a lot of different things. And so when I say a replen, I just mean something that there's a good chance I can buy it again. The only thing that really isn't a replen would be something that's clearance, something that's discontinued. So something on sale, I consider a replen because places go on sale all the time. Sometimes just twice a year if it's a Sephora sale. There was a while every March and October I just bought from Sephora, no other time of the year. And the other places like Walgreens, it'll be multiple times a month. Same thing with Target, multiple times a month. Certain things go on sale. And so if it's true that anything that you ever source, or almost anything that you source, if it's OA, is something you could sell again, it makes sense to somehow keep track of that. And there's a million different ways to do it. You can do it with Keep a Tracker, and you can say, notify me when this goes back up in price. You can do it with, places like Tactical Arbitrage now have notify me when the price drops again, the sale happens. Chris, you shared a gem one time of mill.com, which has been really good for my business. Of you can look back 11 months and 20 days and say, hey, what's a sale that's coming up? Any of my suppliers going to go on sale here in the future? And then maybe you hold off and you don't buy inventory yet because something's going to be just a little bit discounted in the next couple weeks. And the idea is that it works both ways. It's that it's going to be profitable again, but also it's when you're sourcing, there's a scenario that you see something that is currently not profitable, and you have to somehow communicate to your VA how to still add that, because you might actually want to buy it because Nike's going to be on sale for 30% off next month. And even though right now you're looking at the price and it's not profitable, it will be profitable. And my virtual assistant and I have this terminology of, if we had a sheet for a long time that was, hey, Nike 30% off, Target 30% off, Vitacost 30% off. And it was all these things. It was like the maximum discounts that I've ever seen at these stores. And I basically explained to him, if you've ever seen this ASIN have 30% ROI ever in its history with the percentage off that is, Nike's 30% off because you stack a discounted gift card with a coupon, or with their 20% off sale. And every store is different, but it was just, hey, if ever the math says that this thing might be profitable, just add it to my spreadsheet. And then developing a system, whether it's having a place like OA Cheddar or Replen dashboard to track it for you, or have your own Google sheet, which I have, and just a system to track that can notify you when it's profitable again. And with that, it's not, this is what people have been talking about forever, but it's just hard to put the system in place and get it working. But once you do, then you're not sourcing very much for new products. You're just sourcing within your own database of products that you've accumulated over the past 4 years. And that's really where I am, where and I believe this is honest. I'm not exaggerating, that if I just source nothing else, I think that I would still have $100,000 months every single month the rest of this year. I think next year it would start dipping down because I would get gated in some things, and stuff doesn't last forever. But I could twiddle my thumbs, work 10 to 15 hours a week only, and just replenish and not look for new stuff, and pay for my family for many years to come. But I guess I want to make more, and I have this period of time that my kids are still young. We do homeschool, but they're in school, and with my wife and I, and they have these X amount of hours that they're occupied. And it's like, well, what the heck? Why not just open my laptop and buy some more stuff? But that is the power of when you take the time to set up a system to track products, to reorder products, and you get people around you, even though it's just me with basically my virtual assistant, who is amazing, to help you with that. It's a lot easier than you might think.
That's I'm gonna have to mark the time. That's a heck of a soundbite there. Yeah, it's preaching to the choir of how valuable your own database, when you do it right, is. I love that. Hey, so I've heard you say that you never want to find the same product twice. Can you explain what you mean by that?
Yeah. So this again is what I communicate with my virtual assistant, because, and it's really with them in mind of kind of what I said before of that, um, you might be looking at something that's not profitable now, and then you mentally discard that. And we don't even realize we do it sometimes. But, if you're sourcing a new brand, say you come across Tarte Cosmetics, and you look and you're like, oh, no, that's $2 loss. Hey, and then you do a few more Tarte, and you realize, hey, this is not profitable. And then you kind of put um, this thing in your head or on your spreadsheet, whatever, of, hey, let's just never source this because it's obviously not profitable. But then you never realize that, hey, they do go on sale. So if it's a new brand, if it's something you're not familiar with and you see it's not profitable, right then doing the extra deep dive to go to mill.com and see if they ever do a sale, to go to Card Cookie and see if they have a discounted gift card that you're missing. And then there's certainly times that you discard something, and then 6 months later, you're like, all right, there's got to be something else to that. Like, that was Bath and Body Works for me. I'm gated in it now and I don't sell it, but it was just always not profitable. And eventually I was like, this is ridiculous. There's 50 sellers on there. What am I missing on this? Like, what is it? A sale? What is it? And then when you go back and you try to figure it out, but for a lot of things, I can discredit them pretty early as hey, I think this is probably wholesale. And other things, I've gone to my virtual assistant before and said, hey, on this brand, uh, if there's a sale that happens, will you just literally add anything from that brand that sells, this much per month? Or just because if there's a good coupon code that comes, and if you can stack the gift cards with that discount at the same time. And it doesn't take, again, with someone that I pay $6 an hour, it's not a huge investment for me. And I know, and this is what's harder for a new seller, is it can take a little bit of time, but we're playing the long game. If you are trying to do this for full-time income, it's what's best for the long-term success of your business. And it's hard for someone that needs to make money right away. And that's why a lot we do go clearance shopping and sale shopping and immediately source just what's profitable right now. But especially if this is like something that you still have a job, you still have income, just what you're doing is not going to feed your family right this second, it makes sense to go the extra mile, get your systems in place, and save information the first time you're looking at it, and have a way that you can revisit it again and know when it's profitable later.
Thank you for listening to the Clear the Shelf podcast. My magnanimous co-host Chris Rasick has put together a gift for you for being a listener. It's called the Monthly Goal Tracking Spreadsheet, and it's free. The spreadsheet will help you break down and track how much you've purchased, which should be a leading indicator of how much you will sell, and then you'll be able to track how much you've sold as well as your estimated monthly profit on a daily basis. This will all feed into the daily averages so you can ensure that you're on track to meet your goals each and every month. Grab it for free today over at cleartheshelf.com/goal-tracking. Thanks again for being a listener. Now back to the show. So let's talk a little bit about what some people seem to have a big problem with. They're looking at Keepa and, they're oftentimes not sure what to do. What are the first maybe one or two things that you're looking at in a Keepa chart when you're sourcing?
The first thing would be the velocity, and if it has a monthly sold mark. One of the things I used to look at is drops. I'll glance at it, but that's not a deal breaker for me. And so really I think I learned more about how much it sells by looking at the Keepa chart and looking at the sales rank, like going up and down. And it's probably really hard to articulate without a Keepa graph in front. But what I've learned over time is drops are not created equal. There's some categories like clothing that Keepa scrapes multiple times every day. If there's a clothing item with 5 drops, it sells 5 times a month. There's probably not much about that. There's other categories that Keepa appears to just scrape every couple days. And so if Keepa is just scraping a certain category just a couple times a day, or sorry, every 2 days, it caps out at 15 drops. Like that's the most drops you're going to see on that category many times. And something that drops 15 times, I've sold over 100 units before. Something that drops 7 times, I've sold personally 40 units in a month before. And so really, once you just get used to, and all of this goes down to it, there's nothing that I've unlocked that other people can't figure out. It's just looking at your own data of seeing that something you sent in 10, that 7 sold in 7 days. That means I could probably sell 30 of them. And then you see over and over again, well, that sold that much in 7 days. That doesn't make sense. This only has this many drops. So really I'm looking at Keepa to figure out, hey, what's velocity? And hey, what's an expected price I can sell that for? And really, as long as I see velocities, if I can come to the conclusion velocity is going to be good enough and price is going to be stable enough, and at that I'm have a good enough ROI. ROI is my number one metric. Then it's good for me. And I really don't, unless it's a weird Keepa graph, I don't get into the data tab. I don't get into buy box sharing. I don't care who else is selling it. Unless there's some other, unless it's a fringe buy and something like that.
Yeah. So I want to dive a little bit deeper into two of those things. Number one, I'm going to be quite frank. You made a really great reply to someone on why you don't use drops in your sourcing. And that is, I was like, okay, we got to have Grant on, because I am a big proponent of not using drops. But I guess one of the things I'm curious about is how far back are you going to figure out if something is going to stay stable price wise?
It depends on what it is. You can normally tell what something is if it's going to, at least, well, there's two things, velocity and price, right? I know you asked about price. Velocity wise, you can normally tell if something is a household item. Hey, this sells year round. Hey, Kleenexes probably sell a little bit more when people have the sniffles in the winter. But for price, I think my Keepa's defaulted to 90 days, and that normally tells me enough. But before I would go super deep on something, I might go back a little bit more. But really, I mean, honestly, if I'm being honest, rarely am I going back before 90 days, unless there's some exception. I think that tells me plenty. I mean, that's two inventory turns for me, and it's coming to the realization that everything can tank. There is anything that I buy, if it goes on a leads list, it's going to tank some. And it's why I do avoid things that I think sell less than 10 times a month, my drop number that I stop at is about 7. If it's below 7 drops, it's probably not worth messing with. There's only a couple things that I sell below that, because more velocity kind of saves it from tanks. It can hold 50 sellers more if it sells 100 times a month than if something just sells 20 times a month. Mm-hmm. But yeah, I think 90 days most of the time tells me everything I need to know for a test. I think that's maybe a good way to put it.
That's interesting about the frequency of Keepa scrapes per category. Mm-hmm. That's a really smart concept. And on that note, are there any categories, without, certainly don't give away any trade secrets here, but are there any categories or brands that you would consider gold mines for your Replens system?
In 2021 and 2022, beauty was wonderful. I mean, there were certain brands that made me almost full-time income by themselves. And I always have in the back of my mind of, I've been really lucky the past couple of years. I really haven't gotten restricted a ton. It was actually in 2021 and 2022, I got hit the hardest, maybe early 2023, when Clinique went down and the whole Estee Lauder group and things like that. So I've been able to pivot to different categories. I basically tell my VA, hey, don't do video games. I love video games, but it seems video games and electronics seem to be where a lot of people go to because the price is higher, and just seem to. I've just anecdotally seen some things tank a little bit. So other than that, it's really every category. It's more of I think my favorite ASIN would be something that does not get broken in shipments. So candles are out, glass is out, those feminine hygiene products that have the perforated edges are out, and things like that. And so if it's really small, has a small fulfillment fee, that helps me with my more narrow margins. Returns don't kill me as much. If the fulfillment fee is only $3, that means every time it gets returned, if it's still in good shape, I'm only out $3. And yeah, so it's really less about the category and more about, does it sell? Is it going to break when it ships to me? And is it easy to prep? I love stuff I can just throw a sticker on. I know there's people that are hardcore, polybag everything. Amazon warehouse is filthy. I get it. And there's some things I've put a sticker on and I had a ton of returns and I was like, I probably should polybag this next time. But, easy prep, small, low returns. That's kind of my staple at whatever category it is.
Can you just people have a hard time creating like their own systems, and you're a systems guy. Can you sort of quickly walk us through a day in the life? What does sourcing look like for you now? What are you spending your time on, and things like that?
Yeah, I think the number one thing that I encourage people to focus on are the things that are going to make you money. And there's really 3 tiers to that. One is you got to buy it, and 2, you got to set it in, and then 3, it's got to sell. So of all the other things that I might forget about, like I'm actually really bad about my death pile. A lot of it's listed, but because a lot of this, some of the stuff I get back is pretty cheap, and there's not a ton of just profit. It's not like I have 150 purses I was gated in. I would promise you I'd be really good about listing those if I had that much type of capital sitting here. But I'm really big on just those big 3 things. And so for the buying side of it, replenishments first. So before I'm going to even look at the things that my virtual assistant has sourced for me, I'm going to make sure in that morning, everything that that my spreadsheet tells me is profitable, and low on stock, then I go ahead and send that in. And so that's a whole separate thing we can dive into. But I have a Google sheet. I had the easiest job of my life as a graduate student, where I was in charge of people that led classes on Microsoft Word and Excel, and I forget, it was like CIS something I took in college. But what I did learn from a lot of them was how to do functions and how to do formulas, how to do a VLOOKUP function. You run a report, how you can throw all those reports just into one spreadsheet that has all the data that you need. And so for me, the reason why I stick to just a Google sheet that is certainly souped up and has different things on it. Every single thing that I need to make a buy is on one row. And so on that same row, it has my Amazon link, my supplier link. It has how many I sold the past 7, 14, 30 days. It has my stock count. It does a fancy formula that I stole from someone else of how to guesstimate how much you should send in based on your stock count and sales. And it says my current profit and current buy box profit. And then those things turn certain colors when they hit certain metrics. When ROI is above 25%, when stock is below what it should be. And then if I have certain things light up, I just buy it. And I know I'm making it sound way easier than it probably is, but I've also been doing this for so long that there's many times that it is just straight up sorting my spreadsheet by what my spreadsheet tells me I should buy, and just go down arrow and keep buying and keep going down arrow over and over again. And There's some suppliers I only buy from once a week because I've learned that it's just takes way less time to do something. Instead of looking at it 7 days a week, it just some things I just need to just look at it once and buy everything from that store that day. And then, there's even something my VA buys one thing for me. It's a store that has a discounted gift card, and I'm not comfortable giving my VA my credit card. I've heard I know many people do that, and there's nothing wrong with it. I do have a friend that has a horror story with that, and so that's probably just going to stick in my brain forever. And so there's something he buys every morning and every night from some supplier, and has for about 60 days, I think now. He's made profit from that store to pay for himself just by buying that and spending 20 hours a week buying that. Everything else he does for me is gravy because he does that for me. And so that's the buying side of it, right? Like, spend your time on first your replenishments, your tried and true. If it was profitable once, it's more likely to be profitable again. There's many times I'm out of money after that, and then that's it. And sometimes though, I'll get to the end of the week or the end of the month, and I see I have space on my credit card, and then I'll go look at the things my VA found for the week, or maybe some suppliers that are down the tier of buying from. Walmart, Target now, I probably buy maybe once a month just because the ROI just isn't as good as some other places. And so if there's money left, I'll buy from there. But I want to focus on the stuff that is more likely to be profitable and best ROI. And then, sending it in, it's really important to me as soon as it comes, having a system in place to get it out of here. And so whenever my schedule goes off of my worker schedule, I have just one prep person that's paid right now, and my wife, who is paid in other ways, and are just paid as a byproduct of it. I'm not trying to make a joke here. But yeah, so when he's here 3 days a week, I'm here as well. I've learned a lot about myself, that I work better around people. And so if I'm in a room by myself with a laptop, I'm going to be far less efficient than if I'm either sitting next to one here, or if I'm at the gym in this little lobby area they have and people walking past me. I don't know why. Those people hold me more accountable. Learning those things about yourself to be more efficient is, there's a term for it when you work better around people. My wife taught me that. I'm like, yeah, that's definitely me. And then the selling part is just don't hold on to anything for too long. If it's been there for 180 days, it is gone at any price that I can. And really, I'm trying to get under 90-day turns, and that's for my cash flow. And just because it's, it will sound like a brag, but it just is what it is. There's more things on my spreadsheet that I have to buy than I have the money for. And if that's always the case, then that thing sitting there not selling needs to just go away, even if I lose 50 cents or $1, and sometimes more. So, but yeah, that triad of buy, ship, and as long as you're constantly buying, and as long as things are constantly selling, and there's stuff just not sitting around your house, you're going to make money. And the other things can work themselves out. And in my spare time, I work out those other things.
Nice. Now, I'm going to take a little left turn before we hit the next section here. You talked about, if there's still money on the credit card, and you talked about cash flow a little bit. How do you manage your cash flow so that you can not only pay yourself, take care of your family, take care of your employees, but also, like, you're in a growth phase, So how do you balance all of that at the same time?
Yeah. So, I'm not afraid to be real transparent with cash flow because so many people don't talk about it. One of my pet peeves is anyone that tells a new seller, hey, you can 5x your money in a year by selling on Amazon. That is the biggest lie that I've ever heard. And if on month 10 or 11, if you liquidate everything, maybe, right? If you work hard for 10 months and then you try to sell it all out, like, you might have 5x your money. But what happens is most new sellers, what they want to do is they want to grow their business and they want to scale their business. And as you scale your business, you have no money because your money is in inventory. And there's not 5x of the 1,000 you started with in your pocket at the end of the year. In fact, most sellers, I would venture to guess their first year, they make less than minimum wage on actual throughput money. And I've said that before, and people have really pushed back hard and said I'm over exaggerating, but I still stand by that. It's not that you're not. I mean, inventory is an asset, right? Like, and so there's still, because you can make an argument that money belongs to you and that money belongs to Amazon, and both have a point, but it's still true. So I think maybe the best way, I'm gonna round some numbers just to explain what cash flow looks like for someone like me. I have at any given time, I'll round the numbers to help with math, but maybe about $100,000 sitting on a credit card. And I say that singularly, but it's plural. And so maybe 100,000 altogether. At a given time, I might have 50,000 in my business bank account. And so it's something that my wife and I have to live with is if I get suspended, there's a gap there, right? And we have a plan in place of where that money can go so that we can pay stuff off and I can go get a different job if I get suspended for a long period of time. And so people hear that, right? If I stopped right there, people would just continue to say, man, that's ridiculous. That's too risky. You're just asking yourself to get in trouble. And I get that, right? I recognize the risk, but it's the risk that every self-employed business owner takes anyway, right? Now, the other thing though, is if I were to say that I'm done selling and I stop selling today and I liquidate, I would in 3 to 4 months, because I have an inventory valuation of over 150,000, I'd be sitting with probably over 200,000 in the bank this time next year, or after everything sells out, however far it does. And so it's all about perspective of how you look at it. Am I in debt? Yeah. Am I in good shape with my business? I think my cash flow is in good shape, because if I liquidated, I've worked on it. I've sold on Amazon for 4 years, and I've made at least 6 years worth of income for my family. And I'm okay with that. But that's the state of what cash flow is. So as far as like, how can I actually, with those numbers and everything, how can I actually provide for my family, and how could I provide for my family early on? In the very beginning, it was literally having 0% interest credit cards have money just sit for a year. It was, hey, I have 20,000 from Chase sitting here. I have 20,000 from American Express sitting on this card. And then I just monthly could pay off all the other cards. And there was enough wiggle room to move X amount of dollars for our family. Part 2 of that is cash back is wonderful. And cash back can essentially feed my family. Not quite, but close to it. And then nowadays, though, what it is for me is just that you have to get to a point that whatever you're paying yourself, whatever goes from your business account to your personal account, you have to grow some more than that. That's the only way my business can grow. And I'm just thankfully at a point where my business nets inside the business twice as much as we need to provide for my family. So every month, X amount goes out. It's been the exact same amount that's come out to my personal account for the past 2.5 years. We live off of that. We reinvest the rest. We grow the rest. And there's going to be one day that I do decide to get out of Amazon, and I'll sit for a couple months while I watch all the money come in that I never had, and it'll be the best feeling in the world. But for now, it's time to keep growing. And even with the gating and even with how hard it is now, I'm still making more to offset that, and I'll probably stay on Amazon until it gets too bad. And I personally I think I'm still several years away from the negatives of Amazon getting away with all these positives that it does too. So I actually forget your original question, but I think I touched on it a little bit.
Yeah, no, you did. Thank you.
So I want to talk about a delegation. You mentioned a bit of trepidation as far as credit card access for VAs and whatnot. So I'm curious what what tasks and roles you've outsourced and how you came about deciding what to give out to somebody else and what to keep and kind of how you arranged that whole thing.
Yeah, the good general rule is you want to outsource the things that are easiest for other people to do. You want to focus on the things that you do best. And so lots of times prep is one of those. You can make the argument for sourcing being one of those or not being one of those. I think that because of the money difference between me and my VA. My VA makes $6 an hour. You should do the math on your business to see how much you make per hour based off the amount of time you put in. I make well over, I at least 10x that of him. And so even though, yeah, my VA is not as good at sourcing as me, he's probably just maybe half the speed of me. And so it makes sense math wise having him do almost all the sourcing. I still nudge him in directions. I'll still all the time. We try to meet once a week. It's realistically probably 2 to 3 times a month. And I'll say, hey, here's some brands I want you to run some Keep a Product Finder filters on. Hey, here's a website that's having a sale. Here's a link. Can you throw everything on my spreadsheet that's 20% ROI or more, or whatever it may be? I'll nudge him, but he has his default things, and he can add quite a few leads just himself with no interference from me. So much of the new sourcing side, apart from just my nudges of telling him, hey, this seems to be working well, do more of this store, do more of this brand, I've outsourced most of that. I haven't outsourced most buying. It's no particular reason other than I think I've been able to make buying so fast for me that since I can look at a spreadsheet and I could buy 1,000 units in an hour, depending on what store we're talking about. And so it just doesn't make sense for someone else to do that. These are, especially as deep as I go, if I was someone that maybe just did 3 to 5 units of something and, maybe it would make a little bit more sense, but I want to make those calls to send 20 versus 50 versus 100 of an ASIN. And prep, I think, is a great one to outsource. And so we use a prep center, Network Prep, for 2 years. They were great. It just came down to the fact that I'm able to get my sales techs back here. I can get things prepped for out the door, probably about 30 cents a unit. If you include overhead, it's about 40 cents a unit. I think the last time I checked, and I just can't get that at a prep center. So, so I outsource most of that, but I still am here to kind of quality control it. I do the final boxing because once you're selling, there's some stuff that I do sell 30, 40 of the same brand, and it's just really easy to have something mislabeled. And so I do play a little bit of a part of prep. But yeah, even my VA helps with prep though. I make a little video once we have everything unboxed and sorted and tell him, hey, this is what's here. This is how many units. This is what the expiration date is. And he uploads all that on Inventory Lab for me. So I just got to go in the next morning and just hit print all labels and everything's printed for me. And so it goes back to, Chaz's line that stuck with me of anytime you can save yourself 5 seconds in a repeatable task, it's important. And if you have a batch of 50 ASINs on Inventory Lab, especially nowadays with the new API change, you're talking a couple hours of time. I don't deal with that. My VA does that. And guess what? Even though it takes a while to create a new ASIN, because our time zones are 12 hours apart, he deals with all that crap at night. And by the morning, all the errors are done and things are good to print. And so it's things like that. Always asking yourself, how can I do this a little bit faster? And in talking with others and asking others how they're doing it. I stole that video idea from someone else. Most things I don't recreate myself. I don't create myself. I just recreate something that worked for someone else.
Mm-hmm. It's a bit of a hot take, right? The calculating your own value, but then, kind of taking it a step further and calculating, the deficiency of, and I'm not saying that disrespectfully, but like the the loss in skill level to the VA versus what they make. That's really interesting way to look at things.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm curious. Before we go on to this next question, do you mind saying what state you're in? I forget where you live.
I'm in Ohio.
Ohio. How quickly do you get sales tax back in Ohio when you fill out the paperwork?
Yeah, so here's a fun thing. So I've submitted June. I do them in normally just every 6 months. I should do them sooner, but I don't. So our July through December last year, I submitted that in February, and I still haven't gotten it back. At worst, it takes 8 months. But here's the great thing: they pay me interest on it. So I last time I got an extra like $400 or $500 off of them taking 8 months to pay me on time. So there's, as long as the same people keep working in Ohio, Department of Taxation, shout out to you all. You're doing a great job. My VA helps with most of that. I have to on the front end get things organized and make sure he knows the things he has to fill for them. And I had to talk to 3-4 people that had no idea what they were doing, in the department of, hey, I don't know how to do that. Hey, I don't know what form you need. Hey, I don't know that. And then you fill it out, and I had to wait, 9 months to figure out if it works or not. And there's many states I've tried to help people with. You can't get your sales tax back, and it does take a lot of time. Like my VA spends, when he does that report, I mean, he spends I think 15 hours filling out all the stuff he does.
Mm-hmm.
But that's $100 for me to get back all my sales tax, and that's the key there. It's the math, and it's because I got lucky with a virtual assistant that he was actually hired to do wholesale sourcing, and he didn't do that very well, but I liked him. And so I trained him in basically every other thing. And he's like, I'll do whatever. I don't freaking care. Like, just tell me what you want me to do. And so he does a great job with all those administrative things and things too. But yeah, sales tax and getting your money back is sometimes really, really difficult. But once you streamline it, there's value.
Nice. Yeah. So just curious, there's a service out that'll do it for you now. And so I was curious if it's
it's on that list.
Oh, nice. So you've got nothing but good things to say about your VA. So I'm curious, how did you find them? And I guess what does your training regimen look like?
I found him on online jobs. He'll be with me 3 years this summer. I had another VA that I had for a year. I had to let her go. She still did a pretty good job, but I had to let one of them go at one point, and he had done a great job thus far. And so onlinejobs.ph, all Filipino VAs. I'm sure there's other sites that do great jobs as well, but I've had a total of 3 job posts on there ever, and every single one of them, I had more than 200 applicants. I had a lot of really high quality people apply, and there's different ways you can weed them out and ask certain questions to try to help you. But really, I got to a final 3, and with him, I chose the person that I got along with the best, and I trusted the best because absolutely, there's a lot of I don't say a lot, but there's definitely some bad eggs that would, just give you a leads list and share it with other people. And you notice that every single lead your VA gives you tanks, and it's, that's something you have to keep in mind, and you have to set up things in place to make sure that's not happening. I know my VA works for me because there's sometimes I'll say, hey, this week I want you to just do this store. And if he gives, he's not going to finish the task and give me other stores and have to sum up with an excuse, or he's going to, his other people are going to be really pissed off at him he works for because they just got Target that week, and they're going to drop him. But yeah, I hired him that way. Probably the first week we hung out a lot together and just live sourced with him. There was just some bad habits or things he didn't know of. Hey, if there's no sales rank, never buy it. That's what he was taught by his last person he worked for. Mm-hmm. In drops, he's like, hey, what's the minimum drops? What's the minimum profit? And with me, it's like, well, it's not about current profit. It's about profit over the past 90 days? Hey, has it hit this profit previously? And there's many things that it's just, hey, throw anything on here that makes a penny or more, and let my spreadsheet track it and do the work from there. So I think the biggest thing as far as training is just continuing it, knowing that there's things that I learn all the time. I only recently started using like the data offers tab in the past 3 months. And so I shared that with him and explained to him, hey, this is how you can kind of see something sells more than you might think. And yeah, I think that's really, in the beginning, have them hang out with you. Know that a VA is not someone that is just, you hire them and then you stop talking with them and you expect them to give you good leads forever. That's just not going to happen. It's a relationship and it's a process. We know each other. I know his family. He got married since we've been working together. He provides for his wife and his parents. And we both like basketball. And so we talk about NBA playoffs, at least every summer. So yeah, I think that's really in recognizing that, they're human beings that have lives that matter. And so give them a salary, make sure, I regularly check in with him and say, hey, are you making okay? Are you all okay? And he thankfully does not always say, no, I need more. He's actually never said that. And, giving him regular raises. And just because, hey, guess what? Inflation in the US probably happens a little bit in the Philippines too. And price changes and standard of living goes up. And really, if you take care of them, they're going to take care of you tenfold. And that's why I do believe that he's working just for me. I do believe he's very grateful for his job. And I believe we honestly do both appreciate each other. So it can go a long way.
Nice.
So you clearly you're organized and you're efficient. So I'd imagine SOPs come into play. So I'm curious what your top 3 SOPs in your business would be that ensure that the whole thing runs smoothly. If you can share those.
Yeah, so I actually don't have any SOPs. I actually learned about this word like a year ago, and I know that it's if my team expands, it'd be essential. I just have me, my VA, and my father-in-law. That's the only ones that are in my business, and they all know their roles. And thankfully, my VA has been with me for 3 years, and I don't really have to teach him those things. And my prepper does, he just does a really good job and does whatever I ask. And we have open dialogue and open communication. And so that's something I definitely need to get better at. But yeah, just being transparent, I really don't. I know a lot of people live by him and die by him. And it is true. Like this is true. If something happens to me, there's no SOPs in place for my wife to take over and run it. I can tell you she'd rather just liquidate my stuff anyway and have the money. But yeah, I think that maybe this is just a cop out, but I think because Amazon is changing so much all the time that you're going to have to rewrite those all the time. Like you think about when placement fees started, right? You can throw out your prep SOPs out the window. You think about when inventory labs started back up, I guess so there was placement fees and then there was API change, right? Well, then you're throwing out those out the window again. And I feel like that I just every 6 months in a non-professional way, just evaluate my business and ask myself, what can I do differently? What do I want to change a little bit? Is there some suppliers or, hey, do I want to do more wholesale now? Do I still want to do that one store that I RA? Every 3 months, I reevaluate whether I want to keep RAing that one store. I still do. And that's my SOPs, as inefficient as it might be.
Yeah, that's fair. I want to go back in time for just a moment and kind of talk to the new sellers and maybe learn from some of the mistakes that you may have made. So what is 1 or 2 things that maybe you wish you'd done differently in your first or second year of selling on Amazon that would put you in a stronger position today?
I think that in the beginning, diversifying yourself is really important. When I had my huge drop from that awesome sales month that I went and looked at beach houses to have selling a third of that 6 months later, the biggest reason that dropped is because of about three brands that I can no longer buy from. One of them decided to start selling on Amazon themselves. One of them changed their website where I couldn't get past order cancellations anymore. And one of them gated me. And that dropped, my profit, from, maybe 15 grand a month to 5 grand a month, just instantly. Um, and so I think that's the one thing is, and I'm talking, it's important for new sellers to know that I'm talking here 4 years in. What you have, and I sometimes forget what it was like, as a new seller and getting on the platform for the first time. You really just have to educate yourself and learn about the brands and learn about the websites, learn about sales cycles, learn about cancellation stuff, and order limits, and learn about what sites are popular and what are not, what sites are going to tank and what are not going to tank. And so that's why I don't want to sound like I'm bashing on these content creators that are saying inch deep, mile wide, 3 to 5 units, because you do need to do that for the first 6 months until you stop making as many mistakes as you're going to make in the beginning. And I think I luckily had a good solid footing early on. I didn't make any drastic mistakes that killed my business early on. And I think that was the good advice that was good for me. Don't go too deep too early. Learn from your mistakes. Don't, I think that here's maybe a good one. When there's something that tanks horribly and pisses you off and you lose a bunch of money on, don't throw that ASIN out the window. Because if something went to 100 sellers and tanked and everyone lost a bunch of money, and then there was one time something that had up to 100 sellers that tanked and it was back out of stock again. And I bought it again and I made really good money. Why? Because 99 other people were so mad that ASIN lost them money that maybe they stopped doing that website. Maybe they stopped doing that brand. I don't know. Maybe it was mad enough to even quit Amazon if that happened over and over again. But the thing is, never think that something that cost you money, that was a hiccup in your business. Don't be afraid to not try to do that, even that same thing again. I think the important thing is figuring out what mistake did you make, or maybe that's not, because lots of times you don't make a mistake when something tanks. It's something beyond your control. But even just figuring out why did it happen? What caused this to happen? And many times in ASIN tanks, it just happened because some popular Instagrammer shared it on TikTok or Instagram, and then someone that makes a crappy leads list decided that would be a good idea to grab that on their leads list too. And that's why 100 people went on it. And if that's the only reason why something tanked, it's fine. There's a scenario I would buy it again. So learn from your mistakes, learn why things happen the way they did, but you have to get back out there and sometimes do the exact same thing that you actually failed at.
That's good. So that's almost like the oversimplification of the newer seller, or not understanding why you're doing what you're doing. Let's take it in the other direction. And I want to ask you, what's something most sellers overcomplicate that's actually pretty simple?
I think maybe replenishments. And so if it goes, I don't want to harp on systems, but it goes back to, like, if lots of times when something sells, a seller finds out about it by just refreshing their seller app, and they see they sold a couple. And then they're like, all right, where did I buy that from? I don't remember. I didn't write that down. Where did I buy that from? All right. And then it takes them a little while to find that out. And then it's, hey, how many did I buy? I don't remember how many I bought. Then they got to go through their email, type in Home Depot, figure out, okay, I bought 10. All right, well, how many do I have in stock? How many are left? And maybe you got to keep scrolling. See, did I sell any more? Did I sell any more? Go to Amazon, you look at how many are in there. And then you actually find all the information, right? You're like, okay, I sent in 10 and I have 6 left. Crap, do I buy some more now? Do I wait? What do I do? And really, if you have, and there's tons of cheap software that does this. I mean, there's a software called Replens Dashboard that costs $7 a month. And if you're trying to make this full time, something that's $7 a month shouldn't get in the way of you doing something 10 times as fast. And if you send in something and you just have a method for, if it sells this much over 7 days, this is how much I'm going to send in. And mine is pretty darn straightforward. If I sell 10 in 7 days, I will unabashedly send in 40. Because it's, in theory, if I would have been in stock of it for a whole month, that's how many I would sell. And maybe you don't want to be that aggressive, and that's fine. But maybe if 5 sold in 7 days, you send in 10. And I think early on, I had really strict of, first time I send in 5, second time I send in 10, third time I send in 20. And that's fine too. Just have your system, figure out how it is you're going to sell on Amazon, how you're going to replenish, then just keep it simple and do it. I mean, I help and I consult a lot of people, and there's many times that I'm just shown, like I've been shown the same keep a graph, and like beginning of the month, end of month, they're like, yeah, I still never bought this. I just can't figure out I don't know how many, and it's just send in 5 and see what happens and learn from it. My first month on Amazon, I lost $1,000 profit. I'm not $1,000. I lost a couple $100 profit on my 1,000 in sales. But that's how you learned. All I did is I looked at the stuff that was profitable and I bought more things that were like that. And so yeah, just go and make some small mistakes and learn from them, and just don't be scared to test inventory. If the historical buy box price is profitable, don't be afraid to test it until you really learn more about Keepa.
I'd love to do a little bit of a thought experiment with you. So, let's say someone gives you $5,000 and you need to go build a business very similar to the one you have built right now. Like, you need to build a Replens business from scratch. What's like the 30-day game plan you would go through?
So what I have learned the past 6 months is all new seller accounts are different as far as what they're gated in. I had a student give me remote access to his account, and I was sourcing with him for 30 minutes, and I couldn't find a single thing that was profitable that he was approved to sell. And the funny thing, I mean, this is actually not funny, but he sent me like 10 to 15 ones he found, and every single one of them was either misbranded or generic. That was the only thing he was approved, was stuff that would get his account in trouble, was the only thing that Amazon was approving him to sell. And I don't think it was intentional. I do think it was like, hey, we're going to let them sell any of these new brands that have existed in the past 3 months, maybe, and plus generic. And those were a bunch of weird spelling brand names and bad bundles. I think that it kind of happened by mistake like that. But so for that student, it was just sell anything that you that you can break even profit in, just to get some velocity going. I mean, if gating is that bad, really, you just need to learn the whole process for 30 days. You need to buy and send and ship and sell. And even if you lost a little bit of money, that's fine. And so someone that is able to sell a little bit more, I always encourage them to go after big box private label brands. This particular seller was gated in literally every single Great Value, Equate, you name it, any big box store brand they couldn't sell. And these are, again, things that will make you 50 cents a dollar. But it's things people keep buying, especially as inflation happen and prices go up, people are going to be looking for these cheap alternatives. And lots of times those type of brands will always sell well. And it's just make any money you can early on. And once it clicks, once you start finding some profitable ASINs, then I encourage people just to go with ROI. If it's not as cut and dry as that, but sometimes you have to just make something simplistic for a new seller. And it's, if you have a limited amount of money, let's say your time is infinity and you have a limited amount of money, what you spend on, the higher the ROI on that money is, the more money you're going to get back from that money. If I have unlimited money and I lack time, I don't think that would be the case. Sometimes you want to just go after profit and, hey, I have a limited amount of time, so I'm going to go after these high profit things that do have lower margins, and the ROI kind of sucks, but hey, profit's good per unit. But for a new seller with a strict 5K cap, it's good. Get these very low hanging fruits, learn about Keepa, learn about what sells. And then your next go around, start storefront stocking other sellers that are selling what you're selling to see what's out there. Run some Keepa product finder reports and get other things and learn about other brands. Request approval on everything, because you never know when the gates will unlock for you and you can sell something. And sometimes, depending on how Amazon decides to gate that new seller, that can take 6 months before Amazon unlocks the gates. And, for me, and I think it's worth pointing this out, like the reason I could hit the numbers I did early on was back then you could submit an invoice from Frontier Co-op and you get all of beauty, or all the topicals, grocery, feminine hygiene gone. East Bay, right? That was the name of it. You could get all these shoe places. And then I could basically buy whatever the heck I wanted. And pet supplies opened up in a lot of other categories, like automatically 4 months later for me. That's, if you're a seasoned seller that's telling that to new sellers, you can't do that anymore. It just, even if you use a Frontier Co-op invoice to get ungated in grocery, Amazon will give you 20 brands maybe, and the other 50,000 you can't sell still. So it's about finding anything you can sell, making some mistakes, even if it's at break-even profit, learning Keepa, and eventually Amazon will unlock the gates for you, as long as you are somehow, some way moving some units.
Yet again, sell through and velocity is so key. Hey, so you've mentioned a couple myths already. I'm curious, what's the one myth that drives you nuts that's still floating out there about Amazon?
We've already hit it, but drops and that just, that's why I commented in that. And I think Chris, you chimed in as well, because that makes, makes you do the same thing. I think just, man, I can't tell you how many times I've seen someone say, hey, you never want to do this. Hey, never sell something that's under $15 selling price. Hey, never sell something that the brand is on the listing. Never sell something that has a past IP complaint. Sometimes it's been 4 years and guess what? It's good now. Never, I don't know. It's always these nevers in these people that want to put their eggs in the basket of what's working for them. And that's what even I have to be really careful of. I'm in my lane. And I said earlier, hey, I don't touch video games and, in electronics. And I know there's some GameStop people that are like, good, Grant, tell the world, man, there's lots of money hidden there. I don't want you to touch. And that's fine. And so it's that, take from people as a grain of salt, try everything, test everything, try those things that other people are saying don't work. One thing I like to say is, anytime somebody complains about something being hard, there's profit behind it. Hey, I don't source this, man. There's too many variations. I just stay away from variations. Well, guess what? You find those out of stock variations. It's a gold mine. I don't do oversize. And I personally don't. I don't do any oversize. I don't do oversize. It's just too much space, too much fees. There's some sellers that go deep on oversized stuff because there's just so few people that do it. And really what a seller has to figure out is what's a niche that enough people aren't doing it, that you can be profitable. And there's a long list of niches that are still out there that make money.
Man, if my prep center would let me send in IKEA bookcases, I would do that all day long. So we always like to kind of wrap things up with a little set of rapid fire questions. What is the most underrated Amazon tool in your tech stack?
The thing that made me tons of money until I learned to make my own spreadsheet was Gorilla ROI. It basically pulls Keepa data from your seller account to your sheet in whatever order you want to, and it does it instantly. Like it literally, as you're looking at it, it will change and say, "Oh, you sold one more unit of that." And I think it starts at like $60 a month. It's not for a brand new seller, but if you are just not, so I don't know how to pull Keepa data into my spreadsheet myself. I've been told by many times, man, you just got to get that Keepa key and do it yourself and ask ChatGPT. And I've tried. It's just, I can't do Python. It's just for a different day. And so if you're like that and you also don't like doing your own Google Sheet, that's a very not known tool that was wonderful for me for about a year.
So what's your favorite Keepa stat or data point that nobody talks about?
Probably just trusting monthly sold over drops. Just put 99% of the time, monthly sold does not lie.
The gold line is gold.
Yeah.
It really is. That's definitely my favorite new addition. What is your dream VA task that you would love to delegate but haven't handed off yet?
I am in the process of having him handle all of my shipment discrepancies and the wonderful reimbursement costs that has been happening in the past couple of weeks. So he's always had access to it. I've been stubborn and done my own for a really long time, and I've wasted a lot of time and missed a lot of reimbursement opportunities. I cannot wait until he does that himself. A couple weeks away.
Nice. A question we always ask, is there a book that you've read, a podcast that you've listened to, or maybe a video that you've watched in the past 3 months that's had a profound impact on you personally or your business?
Goodness. Can I say no? I mean, I honestly I consume a lot of Amazon podcasts, and really there's even some podcasts that are not very well produced and annoy me a little bit for various reasons. And there's still really good golden nuggets in there.
Mhm.
And so, it's great. It's great background noise for that. But gosh, I can't. Nothing that I want out in the universe that I'm saying this is gold. So I'm going to say I can't think of anything right now.
That's all right. I know you said you've had, people you've worked with, you've had students. So of course, I know there's going to be people who are going to want to either follow you, maybe reach out. Where can people go to follow you on social media or learn more about you?
Yeah, best place is Facebook. Second best place is Instagram. My handle on both of those is Grant Amazon FBA. So Facebook.com/Grant Amazon FBA, Instagram.com/Grant Amazon FBA. And yeah, feel free to absolutely message me and ask any questions. Make sure you just mention this podcast. I still get messages all the time from those VAs that are trying to get a job, and I don't want to ignore a message that I want to respond to. So if you're in the Amazon world, I love connecting and I love helping. And so, yeah, feel free to shoot me a message, and more than happy to engage in some dialogue of how I can help you.
Perfect. I'll make sure to link those in the show notes as well. So we always end the show with a quote of the week, and this week's came from James Clear, of course. You don't rise to the level of your goals. You fall to the level of your systems. I thought this was pretty appropriate because it ties into the fact that you've got a great handle on your systems. Even if you don't have SOPs, you do have some great systems in place, and you got this operational mindset when it comes to business. I think maybe too often we fly by the seat of our pants as Amazon business owners. You know, we need to a little bit, but not all the time. I know I'm guilty of it anyway. But man, this was fantastic. This is going to be a great episode. I appreciate you hanging out with us, man.
Yeah, for sure. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. All right. That's the pod, everybody. We'll see you in the next one.
Thanks for listening to Clear the Shelf with Chris and Chris. If you enjoyed this episode, please take a screenshot on your phone and share to Facebook, Instagram, or your favorite FBA group, and be sure to tag me and let me know why you liked it and what you'd like to hear more from us in the future. Also, I'd like to give you some free gifts for listening. Head over to rabbittrailchallenge.com and repricerchallenge.com for some free courses to further your business. Thanks for listening.